Welcome to ELT in Chile, a podcast about teaching English in Chile and also teaching online. I'm Daniel Gwynn.
And I'm José Luis Poblete. This is a video episode, so if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can watch it on our website or also on our YouTube channel. The website is, of course, www.eltinchile.com.
In this episode, we're talking with Maria Glazunova. Maria Glazunova is a Cambridge-certified ESL teacher, language coach, author, and speaker from Ukraine. She has been teaching for 12 years. Emotional burnout led to the radical change in her approach. After intense training with Scott Thornbury, she started to teach without course books. Furthermore, she practices elements of language coaching. In her work, she blends teaching with her 4 years of acting experience, 9 years of musical education, and 12 years of yoga and Zen training. Her focus now is to help teachers to reduce and prevent emotional burnout and make lessons more practical. She has just published her first book, How to Reduce Your Time Preparing for Online Classes and Prevent Emotional Burnout. Welcome to the podcast, Maria.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really thrilled to be here today and sharing everything that I can.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the idea of this podcast, sharing material, sharing resources, especially, in this online context. And of course, we have many questions for you, Maria. So I don't know if you're ready for that.
Absolutely.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. We usually start by asking, let's say, our guests, how they got involved, let's say, teaching English. So our first question would be, Maria, how did you get started teaching English? Can you tell us about that experience?
That's a very good question. I can say that it wasn't really traditional way, like you study at school, then university, then you teach and so on. I had a little bit another. So first of all, I can say that I was really lucky because at school I had really good English, like good teachers and so on. So I don't have traumas there because a lot of, like students, they come to me and they all have this trauma, and I understand like I'm really lucky one, Yeah. But I couldn't speak after that anyway. So I totally can relate to this experience when you kind of have this, but you can't really speak, right? But basically, my teaching started when I was in 11th grade at school, because everybody knew that I was pretty good at English. And I remember one day, one cleaning lady, she just came to me. She was kind of like, we communicated a lot with her and so on. It's like really nice lady. And she came to me and she just asked, can you be like a tutor to my daughter, and for some money, for officially. So I was like, what? But I decided to try because I liked working and, with children, it was like new experience for me, so it was like, of course, exciting for me. And I decided to try. And I remember that, it was a really good experience for me because I understood how, back then, I understood how emotional connection really works when you're like teaching students, because I remember that she had troubles not only with English, but even like with her communication skills. She wasn't focused. She didn't have a lot of friends. Nobody literally listened to her in her family. So our lessons, they became something more for her, and it was such a pleasure to see how her grades were improving, as well as, her self-confidence, her voice, so it was like amazing experience. And I remember I enjoyed it a lot. And I actually even had some more students, because it really worked as word of the mouth and so on. So basically it was like my first experience, But then actually I decided to go because I was really into some creative stuff. And I was really thinking about where to go, after after my school. And I entered actually theatrical university because for me it was like the synergy of everything, so I actually wanted to pursue acting career. So my adventure started in that direction, and I can say that it was really challenging and really kind of dark times even for me, because I had one expectations, but when I got into this profession, my expectations not only were blown away, but they were I was so disappointed because I saw all the kind of downsides, really, really downsides of the profession and so on. And, you know, they were not in tune with my inner values. That's what I understood. And basically I decided after, yeah, so basically I decided to move from that profession and to come back to teaching again, because I was feeling a little bit like falling apart, I would say, you know, but because English has always been my passion, so I came back to the teaching. Yeah, so I also was graduating some other college, but it was like linguistic university. So I kind of did a synergy of both of these universities, and then I did CELTA and everything. And I actually went into the teaching like fully, I would say, with all the background that I had. So I think this is also important, not to just like, okay, you maybe don't have really good experience, right? But anyway, it's like an experience. And also it was like a good experience for me how not to teach, because we were like bullied and like everything of that. And I just understood, you know, so, okay, this is a bad experience. That's how I don't want to teach. And I take everything, you know, like with me, and I will actually put it into the practice. And it also gave me like a very good experience, like very good perspective on things, because right now when I look at things, I look at from different perspectives, from different sides. So yeah, so that's basically how I got into teaching, my love of my life, I would say. Never regret it, you know.
Yeah, and then yeah, very good. And then let's say you make some very good points. I mean, you mentioned trauma, which is something that many students, let's say, complain about when you start taking lessons. Like, I had really bad experience with a teacher once, and then they start telling you about this. You know, that's why I cannot speak English. And the second one, the second connection that or second point that you usually mention is the emotional connection that you have with students. You know, like sometimes, I mean, I teach at university and also adult students, and the relationship that we have is very friendly. So, you know, I think that also has a very good impact on how we teach. I don't know what you think about that, Daniel.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is one thing that's nice when you are teaching individually and when you are teaching adults. You can build that connection, and it kind of becomes a friendship. You know, and you go and you miss those students when you finish classes, when they meet their goals. And I think with kids, you know, I think we forget, but I saw a meme that talked about how, you know, we, you know, feel burnt out, you know, we feel demotivated, maybe we're going through a rough time. But then it showed, you know, kids, you know, that they look up to the teachers like we're superheroes. And that lifted my spirit a little bit, you know. And so I think that we can really be a role model, you know, for kids, and really lift them up, you know, acknowledge maybe the challenges they're facing, not having friends, maybe issues with self-esteem, self-confidence, like what you talked about, Maria, and really helping them grow.
And, you know, acting experience, it was really good if we just like take everything away, like the other side, you know. If we take just acting in itself, it really helps, because we are actors, all of us teachers, because we also kind of put ourselves into the shoes of the learner. This is like so valuable, right? And so we kind of see from our perspective and from their perspective. And I think this is so valuable that I kind of took with me this pearl.
Definitely. Well, I think this is one thing, you make a really good point also, that if people don't maybe go like the traditional route of going through teacher training when they're in university, they still bring a lot of really rich life experiences. You know, like with what you've done with theater, you know, like I imagine you can do a lot of improvisation, and, you know, you can bring a lot into your classes, you know, that I probably don't have experience doing, you know, or that I don't maybe feel very comfortable doing.
You made such a good point, because, you know, it really, as you said, like it really helps me with spontaneity, you know, like with spontaneous moments, with this improvisation. Absolutely, yes. And later I will be talking a little bit more about the style of teaching, where like I came from like one style of teaching to the other, and the other, it doesn't imply, for example, working a lot with course books, right? So we kind of overuse them a lot, right? So we can be a little bit more free in that direction. But once again, it really demands this improvisational skills and so on, because, well, what happens is just like you and me, I mean, like you, right? Yeah. So like this kind of conversation, and yeah, and like going into the like live situation, you know, and not to be afraid of that, right? So this is like, yeah, this is valuable. Thank you. Yeah, that was very good point. Yeah.
Very good. And I think
Excellent, excellent. So the next question, you spoke about this a little bit. So your experience learning English, and then I was wondering what it was like learning to teach. I believe you said you have a CELTA, and I don't know if you've had any other training and what that experience was like. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And before, maybe I wanted a little bit more to mention learning English, because for me it was a little bit also like non-traditional way, because yeah, at school, so I had some base, right? But it was just like maybe intermediate level. And how did I get, right, from, because I was like in theatrical university, right? It wasn't, there wasn't really much English, but I was keeping, of course, the level. And it was actually the point when I decided to have like a pause with this theatrical university and actually go into making movies. And I was hired. Yeah, so this was like the best experience, you know, and for learning English, it was really good because I was hired by some international teams, so international project with people from all over the world, and I was supposed to speak English. I was like the leading actress in that project, in that movie. I was
Wow.
supposed to speak English. I mean, it was like English language projects, right? And I remember I had I think half of the year for like boosting, you know, like my intermediate level into, well, advanced basically, you know. So that was like, oh my God, challenge. But once again, yeah, so this what really helped me right now when students come to me, I just understand, you know, how much they need the practicality, you know.
yeah.
And yeah, that's what it gave me, you know, like when I was like back then, right? So basically I was just throwing myself into the situations when I needed to, because I was like leading actress, and also at some point I actually became like co-producer. I was supposed to be like be all over the places, you know, and like, and to communicate with different people in English, right? So, you know, and it was like really practical, like hands-on experience, I would say, of learning English, right? And I'm absolutely sure that I wouldn't get that at the university, you know. I got some, I mean, like for some, basically, when I kind of merged this theatrical university with linguistic, it was just like for a tick, you know, like, okay. then the one, like, I decided to do Delta. Okay, that was maybe more like serious for me, you know, like, okay, I'm just like diving in, you know, like to know the mechanism of the teaching, because like I knew the mechanism of the acting, you know, from different side. Maybe, you know, because actually my parents, they're engineers, and I was raised like in a way that I was always like interested how this works, you know. You know, it's like super curious lady, you know, like girl, and I'm still is. And I think this curiosity helps me a lot, because like I never like stop. Yeah, I still like keep learning, and like I'm always curious about life of my students and so on. So this like fuels also the emotional connection and so on, not only like in this sphere of life, right? Only teaching, actually in all spheres, you know. It kind of makes you alive, I would say. Yeah, so that was a good experience. Yes. And in CELTA I also, yeah, like got into this details of teaching and so on, but I had questions, to be honest, because especially when after doing CELTA I came back, I was still teaching at some school in groups. And I was doing basically everything like was perfect, you know. I mean, like, oh, well, perfect. No, okay, close to perfect. Okay, so like all the smooth transitions, you know, like and so on. I was like such a perfectionist, you know. All this like one ABC, you know, everything was done, but all the time I had this, you know, taste. It was a little bit of artificiality, you know, and it was some, you know, some wall between me and my students, and I couldn't like, yeah, you know, I tried kind of to bring my personality to some extent, but I couldn't kind of do it completely. I was like, I was feeling I was a little bit, you know, like not free, you know, like not free. Yeah, and that was the problem for me, you know, because that was actually going like worse and worse, and this like gap was getting bigger and bigger until actually I experienced this like emotional burnout. Yeah, because I was like over preparing like a lot for classes and so on. So I was doing a lot of, I would say right now I see that like unnecessary things, you know, and I completely changed that, you know, but first I made a decision to change that, you know, because yeah,
and also
I
let's say,
think
well,
it comes, yeah, it comes with the decision, I think.
yeah, absolutely. Well, you make a very good point. You know, like probably when we started, you know, in my experience as well, when I started teaching, you know, we wanted to do the warm up activity, and then okay, like you know, you know, let's present the content. Let's just practice now, and of course, like trying to do that, and then you realize that well, that helps. You know, that order helps, but that's not everything. There are some other things that, like you said, maybe some emotional components, and also not only language, but some other things as well.
Yeah, yeah, and all the time they like, oh, it was really nice. I mean, your lessons, they were nice, and we love you, and so on. But there's not enough of speaking all the time. I was hearing all the time, you know. It's like, I tried my best, you know. But anyway, there were like elements missing. So once again, I had questions. I had a lot of questions.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you make a really, really good point about things feeling artificial. And I mean, the thing is, you know, I think it's good to have a structure.
Yeah.
I think that that's good. That gives students a routine. They kind of know what to expect. But I mean, if you're so rigid and you're always following that structure, that doesn't really allow for any spontaneity. That doesn't allow for, you know, like in the pandemic, you know, like everything that everyone's going through, you know, to just kind of like talk about what's happening, or, you know, maybe go a little bit on a different path, you know, allow for those teachable moments, you know. So I think that having a structure is good, but, you know, allowing for a little bit of flexibility, seeing, you know, where the conversation takes you, where the class takes you, and, you know, developing that connection with students, like what you mentioned.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I remember actually such moments when I would go into the class and they were like, something happened, they were like discussing something, I would connect, you know, to their conversation, and we would like have a really juicy discussion. I would hear some teachable moments, as you say, like write down even something like, and they were like, yeah. So it would go maybe for like 20 minutes, you know. And then I was feeling kind of at some point like at first a little bit guilty. Okay, I'm not kind of following my plan, you know, like I'm already up the delta, you know, like I should be like, but anyway, you know, like I was seeing that it was so much more effective, you know. So and my best lessons, they were not according to the plan completely, you know. When I would allow myself kind of to go with the flow, but once again, not just like chit chat, you know, you go with the flow, but you make it relevant to students. You just like follow them, you follow their needs, their interests, you know, and it is really precious for them, you know. I have introduced all my students, you know, especially when I changed my style, you know, what do you, and I had actually some students who were with me. I still have actually some students who were with me at that time and now, and they also like can tell you, okay, this is like such a great difference, and we absolutely love what you're doing right now. So it's like really relevant to us. But once again, yeah, and that's why when people say, okay, maybe it's like too early. If, for example, you're just starting teaching, this is too early to give them freedom to be spontaneous and to go a little bit slow. I disagree with that, you know, because it is like you can already implement it at the very beginning. And that's what actually, you know, feeds you, I think, in your profession, you know, when you, okay, it can be like a combination, okay, like a structure, plan and everything, but also like place for the spontaneity, you know, for this, like not to be afraid of that from the very beginning, you know. Yeah, actually, yeah. And I talked to some of my colleagues about that, and I was also like sharing, right, this another style, this dogma style teaching without course books, right. Once again, it can be applied to different level, if I can say so. And yes, and that teacher who is just like basically the beginner, she tried and she said, oh my God, it makes such a big difference, you know, even like if you're just like the beginner. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, very good. Well, also, well, Daniel mentioned the pandemic, this pandemic that has hit the entire world. So probably it's kind of funny to talk about now, like, let's say life before the pandemic and like what life is like now. So I would like to know, we would like to know, what was your teaching like before the pandemic, Maria? And what is it like now? How has it changed?
I can say that it hasn't changed a lot.
Okay.
Because just before the pandemic, I was already like self-employed. I was already teaching in that style that I told you about, and it was already online. So basically, when it of course changed the topics, right? And sometimes it was like hard emotionally, you know, because like people, they would come with all the stress, you know, and you're in a way sometimes like a psychologist to them. And this is the tricky part, you know, when you kind of try to find the balance, because you also want, you know, your mental health to be in balance. Because when all your students, I don't know, just like, you know, just throw all these like problems at you. So of course it's not a good thing, right? And you're like, just like balancing that, right? You of course, like, yes, I understand, right? But anyway, like go into like the flow and make a use of this, also make some teachable moments and so on. So you kind of combine this. Yeah, so this was, I think, the most challenging part. I would say the content maybe, right? But everything else, it was already basically the same, right? So, yeah. So.
Very good, very good.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like I think that's one thing that all of us have been dealing with, helping students, you know, deal with their emotions, deal with, you know, issues at home, you know, a lot of anxiety and things, a lot of mental health issues, you know, and that's not technically our role as teachers, you know, but it comes with the territory.
Yeah, sure. And sometimes they were like, of course, like you have one plan, for example, in mind, but the student comes completely exhausted, unprepared, right? And, you know, not very good mood, right? And you just like, right, it's like go with the flow, right? And just like take into account all the situation, right? I even had such situations when, because like you have, good relationship, because like as like you create this emotional connection, right? You create the trust, right? I always welcome all the like good feedback, some negative feedback, and so on. So everything, right? So we can kind of share with each other. And with some of my students, I even like was talking to them, maybe really you need some, for example, psychologist, really we all need help.
Yeah.
It's totally okay. And I remember that some of my students that actually took this advice, and they then kind of came and told me a big thank you. That, yeah, I was a little bit like not sure or something, yes, but when then okay, and yeah, so it was also like one of those moments that that were good.
Absolutely. I mean, for example, here in Chile, we've had, of course, many issues with the pandemic in terms of technology, of course, and access to let's say technology, and also, yeah, like you've been saying, you know, students really need support, and I also, let's say we had a conversation in class, and I say, but you also have to be careful, because let's say everybody needs support now, not only you, but also teachers and also the people around you. So let's say they say, oh yeah, that's true, because they were talking, let's say, from their perspective that they had a lot of homework, they had a lot of things to do, and I asked them, and like, well, I have to grade your homework and I have to grade your tests and I have to deal with the same things, like trying to teach, let's say, through a screen. So oh, that's a very good point. I'm like, of course. So we also have to try to feel, let's say, empathetic for, let's say, what's happening with the people around.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that that's a challenge, because I mean, if if I go to someone and I say, like, oh, I'm feeling lonely. And if they say, you know what, I'm feeling lonely too. And then they start talking about their problems, it's like, well, wait, I came to you to try to feel better, and now you're making it all about you, so I think that, finding that balance, and saying, yeah, I imagine that must be complicated, but then just saying, I'm also going through the same thing as a teacher,
Absolutely.
and that way you're showing that you relate and, like making that connection. So it's kind of like a fine balance, doing it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And, it is such a good point because when I started to show more of my personality and humanity to my students, it became so much more easier because like you'd show them that you are not a perfect human being who knows all the answers to the questions. You have fears, you make mistakes, you're afraid of making mistakes too at some point. Right.
Yeah.
And right now maybe less, and what helps me actually to feel, for example, less and so on. And when you share this, so like, oh, I had the same, like you did, like, okay, and so on. And it makes a big difference. They can relate to that, and they can relax. Okay, because basically with that you create this like safe and non-judgmental atmosphere, what is so useful for learning.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, with this, like you said, like this safe space, and also the idea that, let's say, students, of course, they feel, heard, but I think this, like, also, they, like Daniel said, this is something that's reciprocal in a way, like showing yourself, let's say, the way you are. If you have, let's say, a good day or a bad day, that's also okay. It's not a problem, of course, but I think that's very important. I don't know if you have any other questions, Daniel.
So, moving on to the next one. I was wondering, what are some important lessons that you've learned over your teaching career that you could share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been thinking about it, and the very first thing that came to my mind, I think that I really learned to put, once again, what I already told a little bit, to put humanity and kindness first, at the first place, always. And because, sometimes I just see how we tend to get lost a little bit in all the qualifications and all the, like, some formality maybe and so on. Yeah, and we lose this like human connection. And I just like wanted to share, it's like in the book that I have published, right? I use some quotes, and one of my favorite quotes is by Brené Brown. Connection is the energy that is created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, and when they can give and receive without judgment. So for me, maybe this is the biggest, one of the biggest, okay, like takeaways, right? In other ones, I think it's about growth mindset, to have that kind of mindset when you keep learning. But at the same time, what I think is really, really important for us as teachers, because that's what I see, not only teachers, but not only, that we really need to cultivate also this attitude of being enough. Because I think this is really a problem, because it's one of the things that contributes to our emotional burnout, because we chase. Okay, I'm not like good enough now. I need something more, another certificate or something, and then I can prove to myself and to others that I'm good enough, I'm professional enough, yes, and I'm worthy of I don't know something. I think, this is, yes, of course we keep learning. Of course we have this like growth mindset, but at the same time, this like feeling good enough now. Yeah. I think this is like really important. Absolutely. That's what I also like.
I think that's something that I think that we have learned, let's say, during this pandemic, to try to focus more on the present, right? More than, like you said, there's this learning mindset, there are so many things that we can do. There are so many courses that we can take, that the list is endless of webinars that we can attend, but also, we have to try to take care of ourselves first. And then if there is space, let's say, we can try to do that.
Yeah.
And I think one thing also that comes up with this is there are so many amazing people, I think, in the English language teaching community. And I think that if you spend a lot of time on social media and if you're in contact with a lot of people, you can start to compare yourself with other people. Yeah. And I feel like this is something I've been doing recently where I see people doing amazing things and I'm like, I should be taking that course. I should be doing this. I should be blogging more often. And I just start shitting all over myself. Yeah. And, that's not really, really helpful for a person's mental health. And, just what you talked about, feeling good enough and, being comfortable with what we've all achieved so far.
We should be writing a book, right? We should be writing books like Maria. So
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it actually completely was for me like something like unrealistic. Then, I wrote a book, and for example, to publish on Amazon, okay, this is unrealistic. So, a lot of in our heads, that we place on ourselves all this restriction, it is really unrealistic. And then you just like, I'm working with a coach, Елена Mutanona, right? And I have been working for some period of time. And the biggest, I think, work that we have done, it wasn't about how to do stuff. I mean, it was about the mindset, first of all, because it's the hardest, to make that shift, right? Not just to say, okay, I'm good enough, but actually to feel it, right? And about comparison, this is another thing that really was bugging me for a long time. And that's what I also, by the way, wrote in the book, how I was overcoming this and what helps me, some kind of pieces of advice, I don't know, like my experience, right? So it really helps me, because really it's not, we have this, like, it's very, very tricky that we think that everybody's doing more than you.
Absolutely. And Maria, talking about that, can you tell us a little more about your book, like maybe the way what you talk about, maybe the way that the book is structured? Tell us about it, because we really want to hear about your new book.
Thank you so much. About the book, I think why, maybe like the first, I want to say like why I decided to do it. Because I think pandemic really influenced me in that way that I knew what burnout feels like, and with the pandemic, I started to talk a lot more with my colleagues all over the world. So my horizons expanded a lot. And when we were sharing with each other a lot of things, I understood that, especially with the pandemic, that was rough, and it's still pretty rough situation, right? With this mental health, it got a little bit worse. And I don't know, I just felt that we can be without it, right? And I just for example, all these factors that contribute to it, for example, reducing time, preparing for online lessons, and so many more, it's absolutely possible, and we can be in control of that. And that maybe was my why, to help, to kind of share everything that I have learned, how I came from A to B, right? With from basically the burnout itself to overcoming it, and from different sides. And sharing some kind of tips and practical pieces of advice and so on. And I really wanted it to be not academic. I really wanted it to be really friendly. So you just take the book, you just open it, and you just feel that there is a friend right there, right next to you, who understands what you're feeling, what you're going through, and who tells you, that you are absolutely not alone in all this, And it's totally okay. And you can so here's something that I can share with you, and you can maybe try something out, and you will see, right? And there I wanted to look at it from different sides, and from the psychological, for example, what I have already mentioned with you, it is about this feeling not good enough. So there is a problem, right? And here are some solutions, right? So what we can do to work with this feeling not good enough, and so on, slowing down and everything. And also, of course, I share very, very practical, in detail, as detailed as possible, I try to do it, how I apply this basically teaching without course books, right? How I make this practical, right? So how I base my lessons, how I kind of get my students kind of tell me about their true motivation. Yes, how we kind of dig a little bit deeper, how I base all the like on their interests, and yeah, and I give like really like examples how I do it and so on with some of my like real students who kind of gave me permission to do that. Then I also like sharing with some specific topics that I like the whole topic that I kind of use without textbooks and some preparation and so on, how you can like begin the lesson in some spontaneous way, yes, and then how then you can, once again, you can go again back to your lesson plan, or you can actually go and follow the flow, right?
Yeah.
How you can end the lesson in like a more meaningful way. I also give some tips about how I use this language coaching, these elements that can be really, really helpful because students, they really want to feel their progress, because this is one of the most important things, you know, and how you can make them. How, so once again, you have like the motivation, you have very clear goal, and then how do you kind of support your students, yes, like toward that goal, so he or she doesn't feel lost but feels some progress. And you need to cultivate this. Yeah, this is something that also for us as teachers, we need to cultivate actually of seeing the progress, because usually we tend to concentrate on the negative stuff. I don't have this, I don't have that certificate. Yes, I'm like, well, once again, not good enough, right? But what is good enough? I mean, how cool you are actually, you know, how many things you have done, right? And this is something that really comes down to our like thinking mind. It is like the habit, it is automatic. It is not something that we like, it is just like how it works, you know. But once again, we can deal with that, right? Actually, this thing came from my like extensive yoga and Zen training. I have been doing it already for like 12 years, I think, even already more. Yeah, because like you basically, what you're learning to see what's on your mind, all these like habits and so on, and you learn to like, this is not who you are. You just like you learn to observe it in yourself, right? And then you can change it, you know. Yeah, so you have more of control. You become more like a master of yourself, I would say.
Absolutely. I mean, and the book sounds very interesting. So I think you will have to share a link with us, so where people can find it. You mentioned Amazon, so I think
yes,
can buy there. So
yes,
of course we can share that with our listeners as well.
Thank you so much. Yes, I can also share, like, there is Amazon like Kindle version, there is paper version, and there is also PDF version on Gumroad. I did it.
Oh, excellent.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. And well, you make, let's say you raise some really good points. I mean, for example, when you mentioned before the idea of not being good enough, I think, and also let's say students' progress, because I think this is something that we talked about with Daniel in one of our episodes, you know, that students tend to focus a lot on their, let's say, on what they lack more than what they are already doing. So it's really hard for us, let's say, as teachers, to measure progress, because when students ask for feedback, they say, but okay, how can I improve? And I'm like, yeah, that's something that we can all do. What did I do wrong? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, there are a few things we can improve, but let's focus on the other side as well. Let's say on what you've been doing correctly. That's something that, let's say, that you can do, let's say, well.
Yes, exactly. That's what I also like sharing, right, in the book about this, like making progress. And also there is even one more thing, because of our society right now, right, all this like capitalist oriented, we have things pretty much instantly, right? The internet doesn't work, you know, like a few seconds and you're like, what?
What am I supposed to do now? What am I supposed to do?
Right.
Yeah, instant gratification.
Right. And the thing is that students come to me and they're like, I want English now, right?
In a month.
And they pretty much can understand that with their mind that it is impossible, right, to jump from like beginner to advanced like in a month, right? But when they come, anyway, like somewhere deep inside, they have this expectation that they need this progress faster. Why they're so slow? I mean, I was writing the book and I was like, oh my God, I'm so slow. And then like like share with people, like I have been, I don't know, writing for like 6 months and they're like, oh my God, this is so fast. I'm like, what? This is like, I'm like a turtle.
Look at that.
Yeah, so people write a book in, I don't know, 10 years. That's what it takes them, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I did? What really helped me at some point, because at some point I was really like like frustrated and desperate. I actually decided to do some gardening on my windowsill. I bought, some basil, some parsley, and I planted it, and I was watering it. And, I was like, in that way, I was really learning that patience that takes time.
Things take time, right? That's it.
Right.
That's a very good
like,
technique.
and to enjoy it, like, okay, there is like small, oh, this is so cute, this parsley.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that I do when I talk to my students about patience is I say to them, okay, so, all right, I decide I want to run in a marathon next month. So I'm just going to start running, and next month I'm going to be ready for a marathon, right? And for anyone that isn't watching the video episode, if you don't know me, we can just say I'm not in the best of physical shape. And they say, no, Daniel, you have to practice. It's going to take a long time, probably about 6 months or so. And you have to practice bit by bit. And I said, oh, okay. So how does that relate to you learning English? And then they're like, oh.
That makes sense.
Right. Yeah, but this is such a good point, because they really have that inside. I'm so stupid, I'm so slow, and so on. And okay, guys, yeah, and you just like start this conversation and it just like eases up, so okay, yeah, I see your point. Yeah, I agree.
Very good. Daniel, do you have any other questions from Maria? Daniel?
Yes, the next one. So imagine you're talking with someone that is just starting teaching during this pandemic, during this time of online teaching. What advice would you give someone in that situation?
Right. It's also in the book that I also paid this attention to self-care for teachers. I think this is so important because we neglect this moment. Yeah. We kind of work, and like we think about this later, like even like to have a rest, plan our rest, actually. That's what I learned. And so like to balance our like activity and rest, this is amazingly important. Even before the pandemic, I talked to my colleague, and she's like a beginner. Yeah, exactly. She's beginning of her career, and she's like, okay, I'm strong, I can do this, and she takes, I don't know, like 7 groups a day, and you're like,
wow.
I mean, I want to scream, because of course, at some point she gets overwhelmed. She has some rest, just like she just, like doesn't do anything. Then she comes back because like, okay, I can do this. And then her friend, actually, they were doing at the same time, the same kind of amount of this workload. And at some point she got some health issues, and she couldn't just take this so much anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, right. And, so this is, I think, should go from the beginning. So you understand like this productivity shame, there is this, that I'm not productive enough, right? I'm not good enough, I'm not productive enough, and this is like such a myth, that we would better kind of look into, right, where it comes from. So I think this one about productivity, it's one of the like key points. Another point, I think we have already talked with you guys, right, about like the spontaneous moments, right? So when like, don't be afraid to follow the student, right, to respond to the needs and interests, right? And even if it goes not according to your plan, right, you can balance this too. Especially, of course, I understand when you're like beginning, you need something like to rely on, right? And then once again to like maybe let go right, of like too rigid, maybe, like perfectionistic self, right. So kind of to give some space more space to yourself and to your students, so the things can emerge, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And not to be afraid of that, right? Yeah, so I think this is like the patience. Yeah, for sure, that you're absolutely not alone. And also, I think what is also pretty much important for us as teachers are teachers. I mean, like right now, right? So we have this support from teachers. We get together, we share. Yeah, we have this emotional accountability. I think this is, for me, for example, this has been one of the key points, really, because without this, without some community, right? So this is really, really tough to do it on your own. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
This is
for
just
sure.
such a profession. I mean, I don't know. I did it at some point, but no, it was just impossible. And when I kind of started to join some communities, I just saw how beneficial it was for me. So I really felt that I wasn't alone with all my, this,
Mhm.
right, I don't know, some worries and everything, some problems. And they're like, you can resolve them. There are solutions. And yeah, and you also
Mhm.
are learning from your colleagues a lot.
Yeah,
I have learned a lot, not only from some like top of the top in the ELT world, but also from colleagues, really a lot.
yeah, you make, let's say, a very good point, Maria. For example, I mean, on this podcast, we've talked to many people from different countries, and basically we've all shared the same problems, in class. And also, sometimes we think that no, maybe in Chile this only happens here, but then we talk to somebody who's in England, and when I talk to somebody who's in Ireland or Switzerland or Belgium or in Brazil, they are having the same issues. So that's why it's really important to collaborate, like you said.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And this, like to show some support, to show some kindness.
Yeah.
We need this. We need this more. Not like to, okay, I have Delta, Delta.
Yeah.
We don't need that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point with the comparison, that we shouldn't be bringing other people down. If anything, we should just be bringing everyone up and help them realize their potential.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the potential is amazing. If you don't see it right now, it means that it is a little bit like hidden with your self-talk. Yeah. And what we need to do, we just like need to kind of dissolve the clouds and so we can see this amazing potential in absolutely everybody.
Uh-huh. And well, Maria, I have a question for you. What are your, let's say, maybe top resources that you usually go to? What resources do you think you can share with teachers that maybe they can try in class? What are some of your resources that you usually go to?
Resource, well, my top resource, I would say, has been this book, like Teaching Unplugged by Scott Derby, obviously. Right. Right. And he also like talks a lot about it. And there are right now a lot of like webinars, seminars. I think, what I have been doing also, like when you teach, right? You see what is effective, what is not effective. You see some gaps, right? And you understand, okay, I have the gap. For example, I want to dive more into like language coaching. I want to know more about it. And you just find there are a lot of courses right now, and it's absolutely possible to find some really good ones, even some webinars, yes, and so on, even like for free, and you just like get that and then kind of put into practice, right? And then you see, okay, but not too much, right? So you do it, yeah, then you just let it sink in, let it put into the practice, like relax, because sometimes it's just like next, what's next, okay, just let it go. So maybe for me, it was the best, right? I can also share maybe some more, like especially some webinars and so on. So that has helped me. In the book, I also basically share, I mean, like in this, like how to reduce, I mean, what I have written, I also share some and also I share some ideas for homework that is pretty much because homework is very, very for students, important, right? but it's so relevant, so practical, so interesting. Yeah, so I kind of share some ideas how, like, what can be, you know, and so on. Right. Yeah. So I can share maybe like after this podcast, just some.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah, there is a
Work.
space.
Yeah.
There is a space that we can usually share, you know, some show notes that you can share some resources with us, and then we can publish them as soon as we publish this episode. So no problem.
Okay. Actually,
Yeah.
you know, in this also like book, I also have some suggested resources. There are like 3 pages of my
Oh, wonderful.
resources.
Look
I
at
have
that.
like end notes, you know, like, because like what I was doing, I was like also like getting some really everything that has inspired me. I tried kind of to put, you know, into some links, you know, like to books, to videos, to podcasts and everything. So it will be easy for me to share with me. It's already gathered by me.
Very good.
Wonderful. Look at that.
And I think it's time for the most important question, Daniel.
Yes. So this is my last question for you. And so now the last time we spoke, you were undecided. So you've had some time to think about this and take a position. So does pineapple belong on pizza?
You know, I thought about it and I thought that we should ask the pineapple actually.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh.
Maria just
We should ask the pineapple's opinion?
Maria does not want to answer the question.
Oh my gosh. You're trying to remain diplomatic as much as possible.
That's what my teacher of Ukrainian told me. I remember back then I was like a student, and she was like, because we had kind of completely, well, basically different opinions, like absolutely. And for her, it was kind of painful. And I was, you know, like so diplomatic, you know, and that she was like, Masha, you're so diplomatic. Okay. I like you anyway.
Look at that.
So
well, I do think that being diplomatic, I think that is a very, very valuable skill.
Right.
But also,
right.
no, I like the way that, let's say, you deflected the question and we have to ask the pineapple.
Well, nobody asked the pineapple, right?
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Okay,
That is a good point.
That's a good point. I think we never thought about that. And so, Maria, now let's say my last question: if people are interested, how can they get in contact with you?
Sure, I have some Instagram page. I have Facebook page, right? I have some email, right? Like directly that goes to me. Yeah. So, and of course, I can share with you also everything. With great pleasure, for sure.
No problem then. So we can, let's say, include them
Wonderful.
in our show notes. That's it for this episode of ELT in Chile. We would like to thank you again, Maria, for joining us. So it was a wonderful episode.
Yes.
You shared a lot of ideas with us and also resources. And of course, your book, right? So like I said before, we'll put the resources and all the links that we have mentioned in the show notes, and also the links that Maria is going to share with us. So you can, of course, write to us with any questions or comments at podcast@eltchile.com.
And if you have enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, rate, and or review the podcast. We'd also appreciate if you tell a friend or colleague. All of those things help us to continue doing the podcast, and it helps the podcast grow. Thank you so much, Maria, for being with us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a really great pleasure for sure.
And to all our listeners, thank you for watching or listening. I'm Daniel Gwynn.
And I'm José Luis Poblete. So stay safe, stay kind, and keep on teaching.
Keep on teaching.